we will get into this Joe Rogan story. And this is Joe Rogan talks about how intelligence agencies propagandize us. And it's around, it's based around them censoring us around Hunter Biden. So let's listen. We'll stop and start just like the previous video with Jimmy.
Was it 51 intelligence officials that signed off on the fact that the Hunter Biden laptop was disinformation?
Yes, I believe including 4 former heads of the CIA. And it's really something, because there's no like demand for accountability for those people. Like, hey, explain yourself, you know, like, how did you sign off on this? Blatant election interference, you know? And it's one of these things like, this is why when the Trump supporters who say that they stole the election, believe that the election machines were rigged or that there was ballot stuffing, it's like, even if they're not right about that, which I don't know, I mean, I've never seen compelling evidence that that is the case, but it's kind of like I use the example of like, if you were like if you're cheating on your wife and then she's like you know, like you're cheating on her and then she's like, I know Friday when you were out, I know you were cheating on me, and you weren't that Friday cheating on her. Like, even though she's wrong, she's really right. Like, she might be wrong about that specific day, but she knows. Right. She knows.
I love this analogy, and I think his name is Dave Smith. I love this analogy because it's a perfect analogy for the situation that he's applying it to. Is that Trump is saying this election was rigged or the election was rigged in 2020. The election. That election in 2020 was rigged. Now, we could make it a an argument that these elections are from the voters' point of view, from the workers' point of view, these elections are rigged. Every time they have them, they're rigged. Is it not? So that rings true for us. So to his point, it's like, yeah, Trump, yeah, maybe 2020, you guys didn't rig it against Trump. You definitely rigged it against the people, but you didn't rig it against Trump. But are you trying to say these elections are on the up and up? Are you trying to say that these elections aren't fishy? Are you trying to say that these elections aren't rigged as a whole? Maybe you didn't rig it in 2020. So that's the point. It's like, you know, the cheating example is like, yeah, you know, if you're cheating, if your wife accuses you of cheating and she says you went out last Saturday and was cheating with so-and-so, but you wasn't cheating that specific day, but you have been cheating, that doesn't take away the whole idea of you doing that. So I love it. Like the analogy. Let's continue. I'll rewind it just a little bit so you can hear the tail end of that.
It's like, even if they're not right about that, which I don't know, I mean, I've never seen compelling evidence that that is the case, but it's kind of like I use the example of like, if you were like if you're cheating on your wife and then she's like you know, like you're cheating on her and then she's like, I know Friday when you were out, I know you were cheating on me, and you weren't that Friday cheating on her. Like, even though she's wrong, she's really right. Like, she might be wrong about that specific day, but she knows. Right. She knows you're like, right. Like they know this whole thing is illegitimate. You're like,
and I think that could. And I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt. This could be the point of a lot of Trump supporters. So take away the craziest ones you guys want to label. Take those away. But this could be the point of a lot of Trump supporters. It's like, yeah, you can point out that this specific election, but we know that this shit is not on the up and up. So that could be actually the feeling of a lot of Trump supporters who are sticking with him. Maybe I'm giving them a lot of benefit of the doubt, I know, but it's in the context of this conversation. But I think he makes a good point nonetheless. Let's continue.
Stole it. Right. And they really did. They really did. I mean, they suppressed the October bombshell that would have very likely tipped the election in Trump's favor.
Yeah.
And tried to make it seem again that Russia was, you know, stealing our elections, which
Right.
another, is another major factor in the whole Russia-Ukraine conflict. That, first of all, what an insane provocation of Russia it was for the last 6 years to have not just people in the corporate press, but like the former head of the CIA, like on TV every day saying Russia attacked our democracy. They interfered in our election and then also claiming that they were in a partnership with Donald Trump to steal it from Hillary Clinton. And I heard senators and congressmen and every media pundit, people from the FBI, the CIA, constantly saying on TV that this was an act of war by Russia, that they would say it's worse than Pearl Harbor, what they did.
Man.
And so if you're from the Russian perspective, you're sitting there and you see the most war-hungry country in the world, the country that in the last 20 years has fought 7 wars, led to the deaths of hundreds of thousands of people, destroyed nations, and they're out there saying, you just committed an act of war against us. I mean, like that's quite an aggressive posture, particularly when they all knew it was bullshit. They all knew from the.
Think about that. That's a good pickup. Like, think about what the entire government, the whole media apparatus was projecting. Russia, this is an act of war. You're doing it. When none of that was true. What does that say about people who would say that? Like, is that the behavior of a bully, or is that the behavior of a freedom-loving, peace-loving person or country, or is that the act of a bully? Great things that this guy Dave Smith picking up here.
The very beginning. And so you had all of that, and then they tried to do it again in 2020, claim this was a Russian operation to interfere in the election. And meanwhile, all of it was actually a U.S. intelligence agency's operation to interfere in the election, just from the other side.
It's so crazy. It's so crazy that this is not a mainstream narrative and that the news ignores this. They also,
it's not crazy, Joe. I know you're pontificating, but I'm not answering you directly, but it's not crazy because the people who put this on, the people who put this out there, projected this, they're owned by the same people. The same people who are donating to politicians are the same people who want these narratives sold, are the same people who owns or at least are the advertisers on these networks, these news networks, cable news networks. So it's all a very incestuous sort of process, and but let's continue.
Also ignore during the debates when Joe Biden was saying that, my son didn't make any money over there and I have nothing to do with my son's business. Like, it's all lies. It's all easily proven, and there's nothing.
Yeah. And of course, if Trump, like the moderator doesn't push back during that debate and say, excuse me, Mr. Biden, that's just not true.
Right.
Like, we know there's no pushback on that. They just let him get away with it. And he gets to stand up there and say, hey, look, all of these intelligence officials, they tell them they're backing up my story that this laptop is Russian disinformation.
When
and
they knew that was
exactly
wrong.
what it is now. But I remember there were they had like opinion polls on this after the Mueller investigation. And it's still an enormously high percentage of Democratic voters believe that Trump and Russia were Trump and Putin were involved in a conspiracy to steal the election. They still believe it to this day because they heard Trump-Russia collusion every day nonstop. And that is a huge part of why they support this war in Ukraine, because they think we're fighting the country who overthrew our democracy and gave us Donald Trump for 4 years. It's all just complete bullshit, but they believe it.
Great clip. So, like I said, a person. I mean, what I said earlier about it matters that certain people with large mics say certain things. It matters that Joe Rogan says these types of things because he has the largest amount of ears that's listening to his channel. So it's very important that that's the case. There's a couple of more things here. I'm not quite done with this segment, actually. Reactions. I do want to get on here. Has Glenn been on Joe Rogan? If he has, I haven't seen it. I'm sure maybe he has, and I just haven't seen it. So here's Glenn Greenwald on the very video we just covered. That CIA invented an flagrant lie right before the 2020 election to protect Biden. Reporting from Hunter's laptop was Russian disinformation, was a monumental abuse of power and election interference. Corporate media can't acknowledge it because they played the key role, and that's to the point that I was making also. Just insane. They haven't done a damn thing to make our lives better. They never will because their party serves corporations, so all Democrats have left is gaslighting. What we have left is the ability to walk away and fight for something better. And this is talking about just trying to act like Joe Biden. And the reason I put this under rigged elections is that Joe Rogan is talking about rigged elections and how they do it. Here's more proof of sort of rigged elections, propaganda. Look at this. Bernie Sanders wins 18 delegates. Hillary Clinton gets 11 and Bernie gets 7. Does that look like democracy to you? So to Joe Rogan's point about propaganda, let's pull up this other one here. So let's listen to this quick little video, though, that I had it here for a reason, so I do want to play it, that we can close out this section here. Let's listen.
I don't take much credence in terms of polls because in the end of the day, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris are going all across this country. Democrats are
Jamie Harrison
going across the country to talk about how this administration, which is probably one of the most successful since Lyndon Baines Johnson, has done so much to improve and put America back on track. We are going to make sure that that message gets out to the American people. I don't take much credence.
Now, we all know that's preposterous.